Now, here's Michael Smerconish.
Hello, hello. Greetings from New York City, now home of the most comprehensive employer vax mandate in the nation, thanks to Bill de Blasio, who I saw literally 3 minutes ago. 3 minutes ago.
Where was he?
So I was behind him in a hallway. He was just on New Day at CNN. And I stepped out of the studio where I'm broadcasting from all this week because I intend to talk about him right now. And I would have liked to have questioned him on an issue of great interest to me, which is they're imposing this vax mandate in New York City, unlike anywhere else in the country. What about people who've already had COVID, a subject that I got into last night while anchoring the 9 p.m. hour? I heard it's kind of funny because in clicking around very early this morning, I heard this described over on Fox as de Blasio's quote-unquote final insult. It takes effect 20 days from today on his way out the door. The question is whether Eric Adams, who is the incoming mayor, is going to keep it. And to that, I don't know. But it'll have an enormous impact because 180,000 businesses in New York City will be impacted. I have to say, even before this news, it's a big story, front page, New York Post kind of thing. But even before today and the announcement and going into effect in 3 weeks of the de Blasio edict, I've been more conscious of the pandemic here, 90 miles from home, than I have been when I'm at home. And I don't exactly live in a rural area in the suburbs of Philadelphia. In other words, more masks, at least where I am, and several different stops along the way where people are seeking vax confirmation. When I first checked into my hotel in New York City, I was, asked for my papers. I needed to show my proof of vaccination. I also forgot to mention yesterday, of course, in homage to my father, my late father, I have already changed my hotel room.
Oh, no.
Felt obligated.
What do you mean?
Wait. My dad
My
never accepted the first room that he was shown. Now, he would have been disappointed in me because not only did I accept the first room that I was shown, but I slept in it. And then I switched.
You switched. Okay,
and then I
Michael,
switched afterwards.
That's ridiculous. Right. What made you switch? What was the negativity that you portrayed?
The feng shui. The feng shui was just not what I was looking for.
Completely FOS. Seriously, what went on?
Okay. That, and do you want to look at the Hudson River or do you want to look at the skyline of Manhattan? Like those two things played a role.
Geez.
Feng shui or shui. And by the way, isn't feng shui the tennis professional who now is like living in a bubble?
Stop.
Same name.
No.
Same name,
Michael.
TC.
Peng,
it is the same
what is
name.
wrong with you? Oh, my God. Grant me patience, Lord, but hurry. What are you talking about? So when you've gotten New York fancy on us. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh yeah. Very fancy. Very fancy. So to get into the hotel, I first had to prove that I was vaccinated. And then to enter the CNN building, there's actually an app that you pull up on your phone. I've already uploaded proof of my vax status, and that's not enough. Having uploaded proof of my vax status, I now have to answer 4 or 5 questions to walk in the door on an app. In other words, like a restaurant where you pull out your phone and you take a picture of the barcode on the menu, and now there's the menu on your phone. Same kind of thing at the front door. So that you pull out your phone, you look at a barcode, now up pop 4 or 5 questions. The answer is no to all of them, unless there's an issue going on.
You're screened every day. They know you're vaccinated, but you're still screened for health every day.
When I leave this space after this radio show and come back tonight to host the television show, I will go through that process again.
Yeah,
just kind of jarring. Because I'll bet that many people who are listening to me right now across the country see and experience, none of these things. Probably don't see people with masks, never have to show their paper, never have to do anything.
I was amazed visiting Emma in Brooklyn that everybody wears masks, 100% inside. And I would say a good I'm going to go with close to 90% outside on the sidewalks, just because people are so close to each other that everybody feels more comfortable wearing a mask.
Right. Well, that and you get the stink eye if you're not.
Because you're so close to each other and therefore breathing on each other, and therefore it would make sense to wear a mask.
For whatever reason, yes. I'm fully vaxxed, TC. I have my booster, okay? You don't have to enforce with me. I'm just trying to give you the lay of the land for what it's up. But by the way, I also want to say at the outset of the program, thank you for kind comments for those who tuned in and watched. I thought that, personally, I was okay. Last night. It was very awkward. I'm not going to lie. It was unsettling. I was out of my natural element in a very unique circumstance, and really felt the heat, especially if, in that opening commentary, because I wanted to lay down a marker for those who watched, talking about the passing of Bob Dole, and also how I said this here on POTUS yesterday, how I saw Dole's passing as a metaphor for the end of an era, frankly, that had already ended, where individuals like him, for all the right reason, were drawn to public service. So when the news came of his passing, I thought, okay, this is an opportunity for me to try and introduce myself to a different audience and explain what I'm doing. I'm not sure that I pulled it off, but that's where I was intending last night. The one thing I did like about last night was the incorporation of social media, because they allowed me to do that. In fact, they encouraged me to do that in a time period that is not normally mine. You know that I do it every Saturday morning. TC, you're a big part of that process, because on Saturday morning, it falls to you to determine what tweets I'm going to see, even though you don't share them with me, but you flag them. And I see them for the first time when everybody who's watching sees them. So we did a little of that last night, and I think that worked, and I think we'll probably come back and do even more of it tonight.
Two things. One is, as is often the case, you were better than you think you were. So you were in the midst of it, and it would probably felt awkward, as you just said, but I am telling you from a viewing standpoint, you were better than fine. So just know that, and I think you'll just continue to improve as the week goes on.
But I know how many times I swallowed.
No one else does.
In the comment, they could probably see my Adam's apple.
You were very smooth.
Yes.
There, I just did it twice.
Okay.
I guess I'm nervous now. I just did it twice.
Yeah. And the second
Very
thing
nervous.
is that, oh geez, yeah, petrified. The second thing is that the social media worked very well. And I actually had a conversation with the women who were charged with picking them out about what works and what doesn't work and the simplicity of it, et cetera. But I thought you did a great job. They did a good job picking the tweets that would further the conversation, which is sort of how I couched it for them. And I thought it went very, very well.
Well, initially the plan was to do social media at the end. And I said to the producer, who is a pro, Izzy, I said, Izzy, you got to do this throughout the course of the program, because then people know, oh, I see, he's going to respond to social media. And then, social media begets social media, just like on this program, calls beget calls. So at the end of the Dole commentary, we did it. I also said it's entirely fine to screw up. Like there's a glitch or this, because then it just reinforces, hey, man, this is unscripted. You know what I mean? He doesn't know what's coming. People can say anything they want. And what other advice, TC, do you think I gave Rosalie, who, by the way, is a Bucks County, and historically that's a good thing, a native. What do you think I said to her in terms of what she should show me in terms of live tweets?
I think you probably said something like, no one wants to see any praise that
no
you would like to see. Right. No compliments. You probably said
none.
Something like, I'm fine with people saying that I am, that they are against something that I said, as long as it is actually about something that I said, not just, hey, Smerconish, you're a jerk, which, by the way, there were some of those last night too. I just got to tell you. But no,
always.
So make them smart. And if they're against or anti something you said, you'll be glad to take that on all day long. By the way, that was also a really interesting exchange with you and Don Lemon when you handed it off to him at the end of the hour. His comment was like, I would never do that. Like, what are you, crazy? I would be terrified to do that.
Well, it's also
I thought that was really interesting.
It's also my sorry, I'm spilling my coffee. It's also my kind of homage to
Dan. If we lose them, then it'll just be you and me.
I'm ready.
It's also my homage to a Larry King style format.
Oh,
because
please do that, Michael.
Look,
Bring that back.
I loved Larry King's show, and I will tell you, I have said to Jeff over the years, just a couple of times, that Larry King format, that's a pretty cool format. Maybe what's old is new again. Maybe we give that a shot. And he's never bit on that overture of mine. But the live tweets and social media are kind of the modern equivalent of doing that. You never knew who was calling Larry King. Hello. You wondered if it was going to be Baba Booey. And frankly, sometimes you hoped. Frankly, there was a guy from Philly, Captain Jenks, who was like the original phony phone caller. And it was Captain Jenks who would call Larry King. And I don't know if Larry King realized, but frankly, Captain Jenks was good for the show. Every once in a while, like Captain Jenks getting in there just kept you on your toes and you didn't know what was coming. So I love that.
I hear you that it's the modern equivalent, but you could totally handle phone calls. You are uniquely qualified to do that because of your radio work. My father, from the beginning at CNN, said, you know what? You got to bring back Larry King, longer form interviews and take the calls. So one vote from Woody, maybe Jeff will listen to him. You know what I'm saying?
I've said to Catherine, that I've said this to her, if we ever lose a guest, especially in a Zoom era, if we ever lose a guest, just have a lot of social media ready to go.
Always.
And I can do a 5-minute segment of I can take one of those tweets if it's provocative and have some fun with it. And sometimes I don't have anything interesting to say. All right, that's it. That goes with the territory.
Moving on. Right.
So, what was I talking about? Oh, yeah. So I just saw de Blasio. Right. Yeah, right. Anyway, I hope that I will be more comfortable in my skin tonight. Because no bullshit, I felt nervous last night. I really did. There was a lot of pressure. There was just a lot of stuff going on. It's a very stressful environment, and I'm working with people. I think about myself like, I'm in a foreign environment. I'm not in my native studio. I'm not working with the people that I'm normally working with. And then I say to myself, my God, how must it feel for the people working with me? Right? I mean, think of the tumult that they've just experienced and the uncertainty that is weighing on all of their minds. It's like my heart breaks for all of them. So, factor all of that in as you are watching. We're all trying to do the best job that we can in an awkward circumstance. That's all. All right? But I'm grateful to do it. It's wonderful exposure. I'm proud to be a person called upon, as my buddy Larry says, like the safe placeholder, and I shall continue in that role tonight. Okay? This New York City vax mandate. What I wanted to ask Mayor de Blasio, if I'd seen him in the corridor 10 minutes ago, I saw him coming in, but I wanted to corner him on the way out because I wanted to ask him, what about those who've already had COVID? He has not yet announced all the rules and bells and whistles as to how this is going to be implemented, but I continue to be fascinated by that. I also would have liked to have asked him a follow-up, which is to say, what does it mean to be fully vaxxed? Does fully vaxxed, there's a Seattle Times piece that I flagged. I put it at Smerconish.com today, where we were on this a week ago. Now, other people are now wondering the question, hey, wait a minute, if you have to get a booster, like when I checked into the hotel, I noted the fact that when I checked into the hotel, I pulled out a picture of my Vax card. And only after I flashed it and it was accepted did I realize, oh, that's an old picture. That doesn't include my booster. Like I have a more recent picture of my card that I've taken, but they accepted it. When does that hotel where I'm staying that does enforce a vax mandate, when is it no longer enough that they see Moderna twice and now they're going to say to me, oh, okay, sir, but where exactly is your booster? The AP's coverage today of New York and de Blasio says this: from big Wall Street banks to corner grocery stores, all private employers in New York City will have to require their workers to get vaccinated against COVID-19, the mayor announced on Monday, in the most sweeping vaccine mandate of any state or big city in the U.S. This comes as cases are climbing again in the U.S. and the worrisome but little understood Omicron variant is gaining a toehold. De Blasio is just weeks left in office, said the mandate will take effect December 27, with in-person workers needing to provide proof they have received at least one dose of the vaccine. And listen to this, they will not be allowed to get out of the requirement by agreeing to regular COVID-19 testing. So forget the testing. You need to be vaxxed. Via social media, here's what de Blasio said yesterday.
Here in New York City, we were the epicenter of the COVID crisis. We lost so many people in this neighborhood and neighborhoods all over the city. We didn't have PPE, we didn't have ventilators, we were alone. And then we started to fight back, and vaccines came, and we focused on vaccination. It made all the difference. We're now the safest place in this country, but we gotta go even farther. Omicron's here, winter's coming, we gotta go even farther. Today in New York City, we announced a mandate. All private sector employers must have their employees vaccinated by December 27th. This is what's going to keep us safe. This is the kind of thing we need to do now, not just here, but everywhere, so we can leave COVID behind once and for all.
So last night, Dr. Monica Gandhi was my guest. She's a professor of medicine and associate division chief at the University of California at San Francisco and San Francisco General Hospital. I have spoken to her in the past. She's very knowledgeable about this kind of dichotomy where Europe largely says if you've had COVID, then we will treat you the same as those who've been vaccinated. And I asked her whether New York City should be doing the same.
It's yet another instance where the unvaccinated are facing a new level of restrictions, even though those who have had COVID could have natural immunity. Should we be making exceptions for them? After all, a look across the pond shows just how many European nations, even the Vatican, are willing to treat people who have had COVID the same who are vaccinated. For more on this, I want to bring in an infectious disease expert, Dr. Monica Gandhi of the University of California at San Francisco. Dr. Gandhi, if you were advising Mayor de Blasio, would you say to him, you need to treat those who've had COVID the same as you're treating the vaccinated?
Yes, actually, I would tell him to treat people who've been recovered from COVID the same as the vaccinated. Why? Because at this point, December 2021, we have a lot of data that not just immunologically shows us that people who have recovered from COVID have strong immunity. And by immunologic, I mean B cell data, just this week, actually, in Journal of Infectious Diseases, and T cell data. Those are called memory cells. Antibodies will actually be higher if you've had a severe infection, maybe lower if you had a mild infection, but they come down after vaccination anyway. So it really is about what's called cellular memory. So we have a lot of immunologic data.
Isn't it
Okay, so here I want you to hear this next exchange. I think this is it. There's just 2 more minutes of this, but I think what I then say to her is, and I don't know how I frame the question, but how do we really know? I mean, we may know that you had COVID, but how do we know that you still have, I don't want to get caught up in the lingo and say antibodies, because then some of you are going to say, well, you could have antibodies, but you might still not be resistant. What I really was trying to ask her is, how do you know if someone who's had COVID is safe in the same way that a person who's been vaccinated is safe?
Isn't it, Dr. Gandhi, a very individualized process? In other words, millions have gotten the vaccine, and there's a ton of data as to what we can expect in those cases. But for those who've had it, how do we really know, in lay terms, that they're resistant to getting the virus again? Is there really a way to measure that?
You know, there's not, because like I just said,
the antibodies will come. Can you stop that? Now, at this point, I'm saying to myself, wait a minute. She just said New York City should have an exemption for those who've had COVID. And then I asked the question, I thought I asked it in a decent way. You heard it. And then she says, no, we really don't know. Can you back that up a wisp? Because help me understand what she's saying here. On one hand, she said, if you've had COVID, then you ought to be treated the same as those who are vaccinated. Then when I follow up and I say, well, how do you really know someone's level of protection? She said, well, we really don't. How can it be both?
No, in lay terms, that they're resistant to getting the virus again. Is there really a way to measure that?
You know, there's not, because like I just said, the antibodies will come down given your distance from when you've been infected and also how severe it was. So what they're doing in Europe, you just showed a map, is they're accepting a PCR test of a COVID positive test in the past as saying, okay, you've had natural immunity, you've recovered, that's good enough for us. And Switzerland is the one that's looking at it the longest. They have a 365-day period after you've recovered from COVID that you count as vaccinated or you count as immune.
It's pretty jarring to see that map. I had no idea until recent developments, but it's pretty jarring to see what an outlier the United States is. I mean, there it is again. We're listing all the EU and non-EU countries that do it differently. Why the disconnect? Final question. Why doesn't the United States go the way of those nations, in your opinion?
I can't quite figure it out. It seems a little bit political, and I'm not even sure what the politics means, but I will tell you that no one in Europe isn't a good immunologist, and they're not good virologists there. They know what they're talking about. And I think we should make an exception for those who have recovered from COVID.
I mean, a great question to ask then, back in real time, a great question to ask today, right? Here's Mayor de Blasio, like no BS, testing's not enough, you've got to be vaccinated. The widest employer mandate in all of the United States. Should people who've had COVID be treated the same as those who are vaccinated? And finally on this, in terms of COVID updates, as I mentioned from the Seattle Times today and posted at Smerconish.com, take a look at the story. Is it time to change the definition of fully vaccinated? As more indoor venues require proof of vaccination for entrance, and with winter as well as Omicron, a new COVID-19 variant, looming, scientists and public health officials are debating when it will be time to change the definition of fully vaccinated. After all, it has been more than 6 months since many Americans finished their vaccination course against COVID-19. Statistically, their immunity is waning. So why was it enough for me to show the hotel that I had 2 Moderna vaccinations but not a booster? And at what point is it just like untenable? Let's see. Oh, you've had 1 booster. Let's see. You had your 2 underlying vax, or you had 1 from J&J, or you had the other from, what is it, BioNTech? What's the other one apart from Moderna? Moderna, J&J. Help me, TC.
Pfizer.
What's wrong with
Pfizer?
Pfizer, right. And, okay, you got a booster. Oh, but now, 6 more months in the future, sorry, sir, there's no room at the inn because you've had 2 Modernas and a booster, but you haven't had your second booster. So come back when you've had your second booster. Like, oh my gosh.